Well, Moscow is promising to do its best to help Tokyo with the crisis, having dealt with the world's worst nuclear disaster. Well, Russia has vital experience in this area, and let's cross live to our correspondents Alexei Yereshevsky in Kiev, Ukraine, and Peter Oliver, who's here in Moscow for us. First, let's cross over to you, Peter. What help does Russia feel able to offer Japan?
Well, as we speak, Alice, a Russian Emergencies Ministry plane is getting ready to head off to Japan, containing rescue workers that'll help with dealing with the fallout from this disaster, these sequence of disasters that have hit Japan over the past few days. They'll be helping rescuers seeking for those trapped under rubble from the earthquake, and also trying to rescue those that have been caught up in the terrible tsunamis that were triggered by that earthquake. Now, the nuclear disaster that's taken place at Fukushima is also taking main focus for Russia. We heard from Ekaterina Grachova there in Russia's Far East, talking about what's being done there to make sure that it's all okay. Well, one of the main problems that's come from that the disaster at the Fukushima nuclear reactor is that 30% of Japan's energy is derived from nuclear power. Now, that is severely depleted at the moment, as you can imagine, due to the situation with that nuclear reactor, as well as the precautions being taken over other reactors in the country. So Russia has pledged 150,000 tons of liquid gas to help the situation there, to get power turned back on in certain places. They're also going to increase the supply of coal to the country, and there's even the possibility of providing electricity directly from Russia to Japan through an underwater cable that links the two countries. Now, power, of course, a very important commodity when it comes to Japan trying to get itself back on its feet. Power very important to those people who are looking to try and find people trapped under rubble, to make sure that they can work at night, also to make sure that those people seeking medical attention those hospitals have the power to be able to continue to treat those people. Now, Prime Minister Vladimir Putin has said that Russia will stand shoulder to shoulder with its neighbour to the east as they face this crisis.
We need to continue monitoring the situation in the Russian Far East as closely as possible. I've just talked to the local authorities in the region. The situation there is normal, both from the point of view of people's housing and radioactivity. Nevertheless, the situation must be closely monitored on a round-the-clock basis.
Well, the authorities closely monitoring the situation in Russia's Far East, but here in Moscow they've seen outpourings of grief and sympathy for those people of Japan, the people of Japan who have been caught up in this series of disasters. We've seen an ad hoc memorial being established outside of the Japanese embassy, where people have been turning up and laying flowers to show their support for the people of Japan at this time.
Well, thanks, Peter. Let's cross over to Alexei in Kiev now. Alexei, Russia has a wealth of experience, doesn't it, in dealing with serious atomic emergencies. So how can the experience of the Chernobyl disaster help in this situation?
Well, so far, the comparison between the Chernobyl accident and the situation unraveling in Japan has been more or less figurative. In fact, the experts have been saying that the situations are completely different. The reactors on both power stations are different. The aftermath, the immediate aftermath of the disaster is different, and definitely the security means at both stations are very much different. But indeed, should the Russian assistance be needed in Japan, of course, Moscow would offer a great deal of experience, because Chernobyl, the Chernobyl disaster to this day remains history's biggest man-made nuclear disaster. And of course, tens of thousands of people from all across the Soviet Union back then were used in the clear-up operation, the people who are called liquidators. Now, it is yet unclear whether any of those liquidators could be taking part in an operation in Japan trying to assist the Japanese rescuers on the site. But indeed, if they will, of course, that will be very significant. The Chernobyl indeed left a legacy for textbooks, and all the methods of fighting such nuclear incidents worked out by the Soviet Union still remain as the main, obviously the main line for behaving in such situations as it has been happening in Japan. And we've already seen the first signs that the Japanese government has been using the experience gained in Chernobyl. For instance, just to give you an example of what I mean, the people from 20-kilometer radius immediate zone around the nuclear plant in Fukushima were evacuated almost immediately after the news broke out of a nuclear accident at the station, something which of course did not happen 25 years ago in Chernobyl, and people from a nearby town of Pripyat had to wait for more than a day to be evacuated. This was caused by both the negligence of the authorities and the attempts to organize a proper evacuation. Now, here's in my report, I did a short recap of what exactly happened a quarter of a century ago in Soviet Ukraine, and let's have a look at this report.
Spare no effort in getting the job done. This typical motto for construction projects in the Soviet Union also applied to the Chernobyl nuclear power plant when construction kicked off in the 1970s. It was intended to be a dream project for Soviet Ukraine.
The birth rate in Pripyat was higher than all of Ukraine. People were given homes, and there was a great demand for a workforce in Chernobyl. So everyone worked and liked it there.
But this happy existence came to an abrupt end on April the 26th, 1986, with the explosion of a reactor at the power station. The very same motto used for building the plant, spare no effort, was now to be used in the clear-up of the world's worst ever man-made nuclear disasters. The blazing reactor was bombarded with sand and lead, measures which at first seemed panic-driven, but which were later deemed highly effective by the International Atomic Energy Agency. This action helped to contain the radiation and enable construction of the sarcophagus, a structure built around the reactor to seal it off for several months after the catastrophe. The lessons of Chernobyl have been learned by experts worldwide since the catastrophe, and will have been of assistance to those battling the latest serious nuclear accident in Japan, threatening contamination, with large numbers of people being evacuated because of the radiation threat, something which didn't happen 25 years ago in Soviet Ukraine.
The Chernobyl fallout was caused by a massive human error. Mistakes made by the authorities in the first hours after the blast also cost many lives. But the events of 25 years ago in what is now sovereign Ukraine have proved to be an invaluable lesson for mankind. Alexei Roshevsky, RT, reporting from Kiev, Ukraine.